hopefully, thank you for turning the recording on. And I should say we'll be making the recording available on YouTube of our speakers at some point in the near future. I'm going to ask Dorothy, hopefully you're ready just to respond to some of the points, and then I'll come to Patrick and John as well. Thank you.
Maybe I will start with I'm looking at the chat and responding to some of the questions. But I think there is a big interest from the various local groups also to look at possibilities, how they can help Southern activists. At the moment, there is a global solidarity working group within the COP26 coalition, and we are holding global assemblies every 6 to 8 weeks, and which will be more regular from now until November. And in those meetings, we are asking people whether they're planning to come to Glasgow, or if they are planning to organize protests from their home country, from their capitals or other key cities. It is indeed a problem that many are afraid to travel because they are not sure about the laws or the policies here. The whole of Latin America is in the red list, for example. So even if they manage to get a booking or put together funds for the activists to come over, they are really uncertain whether will they be allowed in if they're coming from the red listed countries. And then what will be the policy? So imagine for a Global South organization, thinking of a quarantine, paying for a hotel in the UK, paying for food will be on top of the 13-day planned visit that they intend. There is also a question of visa, because a lot of, especially the more radical activists from the South, will have, we're anticipating will have problems getting a visa to the UK. The UK system, I'm from the Philippines. Before coming here, before living here, I have I've been invited to many meetings here, and it is the UK visa system that is most challenging for me, because you have to prove, you have to give everything. You have to put your bank accounts and all that, and there's always a suspicion for Southern. Whether you're activist or whether you're here on holiday, that if you're allowed in, you might just disappear and be wanted to be part of the workforce. So there's always a suspicion that people who are coming to the UK might just want to migrate here. So we also have a task force on visa. So we're helping those, and especially those activists that have standing cases, because many of the indigenous peoples organizations, labor unionists, peasant activists, because of their occupation, their activism, they are facing a case again. Their government filed a case against them. So if you have a standing case like that, then that will be on your record, and there's a question on the visa if whether you have a criminal case or something. And many of the environmental activists, their cases are classified as criminal cases, like occupation or trying to stop a dam or things like that. So that is really a big challenge that we are facing on the coalition, how to support our southern activists. Maybe one last point that I would also say is that many of the issues that we are also working on for global justice now, for example, is on economic justice issues. It may not be a straightforward connection to the negotiation, but the thing is, many of the economic and trade policies are actually undermining anything that will be any result from a negotiation, because of the fact that there is a corporate code which is more powerful than any UN treaties that we have right now. For any governments that would try to ban mining or ban fracking, they are fearful that the transnational corporations might sue them and file an investment state dispute settlement case against them. So this would be something that we could work together beyond COPs, because this will be with us, considering that the UK, after Brexit, it's now negotiating very aggressively new trade agreements with many developing countries. And there is always an investment clause that included corporate codes. So that's something we have to face.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you very much indeed. I'm looking for Patrick. Asked to unmute. Hopefully Patrick can join.
Now, I'm so sorry, this is such a fragile connection. But I do want to say exactly what Dottie has concluded with. Economic justice is the central contradiction when capitalism tries to solve its own problems with its own techniques. And that means even though the most obvious way to internalize an externality is to make the polluter pay, I hope you all will focus on the inability of our moral argument, the argument that Dottie put so well, that reparations are due. The inability to bring that into the COP process and make that one of your key contradictions. I would follow in that from the Global South, probably Pablo Solon, the former Bolivian ambassador to the UN, most eloquent 10, 11 years ago. But even today, and continuing her great work, is Naomi Klein. And she's really done such systematic work on climate debt. And if the Biden administration represents some progress from Trump, it's merely that instead of climate denialism, it's now a climate debt denialism, because they're continuing to refuse to acknowledge this huge historic responsibility. And that may mean that the kind of quantitative easing that blows up so much financial froth has to be then directed to not only cancellation of the debt of poor countries, but we're looking at very direct ways, direct payments to areas that have been devastated. And I mentioned, I think, northern Mozambique, where British, your taxpayer resources are going to help Total and other companies drill for gas at the same place, exactly the same place where Cyclone Kenneth brought 225 per hour winds and demolished tens of thousands of houses just 2 years ago. So those are the climate debt arguments I hope you can make. And the second, just again to follow in Dottie's footsteps, is where they want the market to do the work. It's absurd, and it will be more obvious as the financial volatility gets worse in coming months. We're at the highest level of what's called the Buffett indicator of market capitalization, stock market speculation to GDP. We're at this incredibly bubbly mode in financial markets. So my last point is to really question, especially a kind of British mentality, right? The deregulate, neoliberalized strategies that allows the worst problem humanity's ever faced to be given on a silver platter to fix to the banksters, right? To allow bankers to be given these markets to try to sort out the optimal way in which carbon gets priced and gets traded when they can't even sort out their own problems. So again, from South Africa, the saying I hope transmits well. Mandla, a way to power to the people. Thanks, comrades.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Power to the people indeed. And so I'm now going to just move to our final speaker. Before I ask John to just sum up, I want to encourage people to give us their email address. I'll post the link to the Google form again in the chat shortly. If you do that, we can then let you know details of future events, transport, other meetings, other protests, and so on. I also want to remind people, I'm sure many people here already know, that the Tory party is coming to Manchester on the first weekend in October for the start of their annual conference. They seem to return here despite them always being met with huge protests and unwelcome. And there will be a big demonstration, COVID permitting, on Sunday the 3rd of October, and we're going to organise a climate justice block on that to raise demands around climate injustice, climate refugees, anti-racism, and so on. So I hope people will be part of that. I will put the link to leave your email in the chat. and I'll ask John Sinha to be our final speaker tonight. And thanks to John, to Patrick, to Dorothy, and to everyone who's spoken tonight for a really interesting and inspiring meeting. So, John, over to you.
Okay, yes, thanks. I think it was a fantastic line of contributions. I just want to come back on one point, I think, or one aspect of the discussion, and what does solidarity mean for global North climate activists? And I think both Camilla Royal and Dorothy actually nailed it. I think what solidarity means for us as part of the COP26 coalition, and I was at the very first organizing meeting, well, the London part of that meeting, the very first objective we discussed when we set up the COP26 coalition, I think back at the end of 2017, was what are we going to do about global South activists? We've got the most notoriously racist Home Secretary in British history, in Priti Patel, pretty vile, disgusting person. And we knew that global South activists were going to be in a lot of trouble. But the thing is, we can do stuff. The COP26 coalition can mobilize and can put pressure on the government. And they will be in a weak situation. We can actually make them back down. What we need, what we've put forward resources, and within the COP26, we've got full-time organizers as part of it. And one of the objectives is solidarity. And what solidarity means in practice, in practical terms, means allowing global South participants to be part of the conference. And that means one thing we do need to know is who is coming, because we can't help people if we don't know. If they're at the airport and no one has told us they're coming, we can't help them if they get detained. So we need to know every single global South activist is coming, where they're coming, who they are, and they need to have our information so that they can be contacted immediately if they get stopped by immigration. And we can raise a real merry hell in Glasgow if anyone gets stopped. And I think the other aspect of borders and migration is what Camilla Royal talked about, which I think is very important. I've read the article she wrote, really illuminating article. I recommend everyone should read it. And that is the big question that the UN isn't addressing, is what are we doing about migration, which is happening as a result of climate collapse. We should be demanding opening the borders. I mean, we should support the open borders for everyone, but particularly on the question of climate change, this is an issue. What are the rich countries going to do? Are they going to allow people to migrate? The biggest displacements in the world are in the global South, internal displacements from climate change in countries like India and the Philippines. These are where the big displacements are happening. But also we need to think of solidarity. If solidarity means anything, it means taking some responsibility for the global migration, from the global migration catastrophe. And I think that should be a big theme that will run through the whole COP26 from start to finish. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, John.